and welcome back to our amazing stream. And hello,
It's not
hi.
a stream, it's a webinar, Matteo.
It's a webinar. It's a podcast. I think it's a podcast. Come on, look, it's a podcast. Let's see, it's a podcast.
Stream.
Now, webinars are not modern anymore, so it's a podcast. Okay, so welcome back. Welcome back. Hi, Luca. How are you doing?
Good, same as last time. But today, I'm even more excited.
Oh, yeah. We have Tomas. We were able to get Tomas, as all of you asked, we were able to get Tomas Della Vedova to talk about the early days of Fastify. So, hi, Tomas.
Hello. Very happy to be here. Thank you for the invite.
It's our pleasure, Thomas.
It's our pleasure. It's been a long time since we all three were on the same call. Long time.
Yeah, I was just chatting with Thomas before, remembering the old good times when we first met. But, Thomas, let's kick the ball. And for the people that in this universe don't know about you, maybe if you can tell something about yourself to just like kickstart on who the heck is Tomas Della Vedova?
Yeah, sure. So Thomas, based in Northeast Italy, nearby Venice, if that helps, like an hour away or so. And today I'm an engineering manager at Elastic, the company behind Elasticsearch and other cool stuff that you might know about. And probably the reason why I'm here is because almost 10 years ago at this point, I think 9, and I met Matteo. We started chatting about some open source stuff, and Fastify was born. And I mean, the rest of history, I guess, is how you say it. And I guess this is, what can I say, in a gist.
That's so cool. And you and I met almost at the same time.
Yeah, I think was slightly after, like in 2017, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was slightly after. It was slightly after. It's also an amazing story, right? So a lot of people, wonder how do you get from being a student in Italy to become an engineering manager at Elastic, okay? And how you can start an engineering career essentially from Italy, and a lot of people, oh wow, you do it, and so on and so forth. And so it's a lot of people, think, oh, and it's you have to be this kind of connection stuff, whatever. But frankly, I don't think so. And I saw just a lot of hard work. But I want to a little bit demystify a little bit all of that. So first, but before all of that, Thomas, what is Fastify?
This is you should have told me this question in advance. It's a very difficult question.
Oh,
Fastify is a state of mind. I will start with like this.
Fastify is a state of mind. It's a community. I always say that Fastify is a community. Okay.
Yeah, Fastify is a group of excellent people and excellent engineers that really enjoying JavaScript, Node programming. I've probably too much obsessed with performance, but not too much, just a little bit. And I guess all the, let's say, design goals we put to ourselves at the very beginning, other than the technical goals, all the goals in terms of this thing is to be a community-led project. We want this to be to create a group of people that work together, not like running a project in a solo mode with the only goal of going to the next cool conference to present yet another framework for Node. I think that was probably, and without us even knowing it, a bit of the secret sauce of the Fastify success. We were really seeking for success at the beginning. Then, it went well. I'm very happy to say it went very well, but a lot of the work we did initially was only in terms of, hey, let's do some hacking. And I think there was like a term we were using back then, do some mad science, something like that we were saying, and see what happens. Yeah, the rest is history. And I was looking before joining a few key dates for the project. And the first comment was in September 2016. And the original name, by the way, it wasn't even Fastify. It was Be Open, if you remember,
Yes.
or Bio, which I asked to change because Bio in my region means a drunk person. So
Well, to be honest, it's
yeah. So we switched to Fastify, and I was looking at we reached $1,000 per month in April 2017, 100,000 in March 2019, and yeah, in March 2025 is $10 million per month.
10 million downloads crossed. So this is the episode celebrating the 10 million downloads per month of Fastify in March 2025. And this is amazing. It's been an amazing journey. So it's been, but to be honest, it's been growing significantly. Like if you just look at the years, it's being growing significantly, almost growing. I don't know. We did a big jump between 2022 and 2023, but it's been growing very, very well for the last few years. So very funnily, okay. So we have right now in 2025, at the point of this stream, we have the same amount of downloads. Actually, we have passed the same amount of download that happened in 2022 combined. So we are kind of on track, maybe for 120 million, something like that this year. A little bit higher, I think, I presume.
Don't jinx it.
Which is, yeah, well, I don't know. This is behind you and me. Those numbers are completely predictable. Like it's just growing. Like it's just people don't upgrade new version. Old software stay there forever. That's to some extent. So it's amazing. Okay. So as the story goes, I was doing this training in Bologna with Avan Scoperta about Node.js and writing Node.js in a robust way, okay? In an enterprise way, Luca, if you pass me the term, okay? At the time, I was also trying to write a book called Enterprise Node.js at the time.
Yeah,
it didn't happen in 2016. It happened in 2025. So I'm very glad. This is a nice book. Okay, I don't have a book. It's an ebook. You can download it. The link will be put down here. Anyhow, Fastify is there. We have a full chapter on Fastify and TypeScript, which is interesting. And then I was doing this course, and essentially I was covering Express and I was covering Happy, and I was essentially dissatisfied with both options, to be honest. And there was Koa, which was Koa 1 at the time, was very weird, to be honest. So not interesting at all. And then there was Fastify, which I don't know, even that. So
hey, was powering Netflix. Let's not.
Oh yeah, I know, but it was not moving. Okay. And so the question at that point was, what should we do? Okay.
You forgot Seneca, by the way.
Oh, Seneca, yes, of course.
The people that paid the salary for a long time.
Yeah. So what we were doing at the time, like what the question was, I recently wrote Pinot to solve the biggest bottleneck for Node.js application, which was logging. And after I wrote Pinot, I realized that the next bottleneck that I needed to fix were the web frameworks, because you had this amount of time, this amount of requests per second of Node, and then here there was Express. And why we are losing all of this? And yeah, I really wanted to build this, but the question, like, this is a gargantuan effort. Okay, if you want to, there is a reason why every single new web framework that came out now are meta frameworks. And because they building low-level components, it's actually a lot of grueling hard work with a lot of edge case and security vulnerabilities and so on. So it's a lot of work. And then you get one grain of sand wrong, and then you're screwed, and you need to rebuild it all from scratch. And so the TLDR at the time was I met a young student, okay, which happens to be in this call. Okay, and at the time I was a young student, and he asked me, "Oh, I want to do some open source," and I don't know. and I said, I want to do some open source. This guy, yeah. And then I don't know what happened. I started throwing open source to do to you, Thomas, right? You're mute.
Yeah, I was really looking not to. It's. Oh, I don't think I'm mute anymore. Okay. Yeah, sorry, I'm used to this. You know, at Elastic is it's common to if you're not speaking, you go on mute.
Okay.
And yeah, I was saying that the way I always approached my growth was always, if you see something cool new to learn, just go there and try to learn about it. If you see a train passing, try to pick up the train, and see where it takes you. And let's say that the normal training you can do, and like Udemy or that kind of stuff, can only bring you at some point. Reason why then I found your training, which, by the way, I also found the original email. The name was Develop Enterprise Apps in Node. This was the official name. And very fancy. And the next step after that will essentially be to work on some cool project in the open source world. Because the very cool thing about the open source world is that if you know less compared to other people, but you spend the time contributing, the other people will pay you back by giving you tips, good reviews, and then you grow essentially. And that's how how I started. And I started stalking you with, hey, I have this cool idea. Wasn't cool, by the way. But then, that's how we started working together. And I think this was like in June, probably 2016. And then somewhere around August, between August and September, I think we started looking into this Fastify thing, which actually was if you remember, was actually a lot of other libraries.
Yeah, but it's still a lot of
like Fast.js, Stringify, yeah.
So it started in this way. It started in this way. So the origin of Fastify, in reality, so Fastify is a lot of things combined. So we have Pino, the logger, okay? Then we have the plugin system, okay? Now, if you look at it, I think the plugin system of Fastify, it's called Avio. It's a separate library that you can use, by the way, independently. I don't think nobody does. It's at version 9, okay? And Fastify is at version 5.
I prefer the original name, by the way.
Yes. So Avio, Luca's laughing. Okay, let me go into that point, of story, because it's so damn cool. So Avio was started because I was at the time it was spring 2016. I was working on Seneca, trying to fix some very, very complex odd bugs in the startup sequence of Seneca, which Seneca had an asynchronous startup sequence. Okay, this is a really complex problem to solve, actually. And you can, because database connection are async, okay, so they can start and you need to connect, exchange, and so on and so forth to load your system. But your application at the time, the pattern was, I want all my apps started synchronously at the root of my system, okay? But to be honest, this is still a huge problem. It's just that there are tools like Avio and others to deal with this kind of complexity, okay? Essentially, what you want, when your server start listening, you want to have your database connection ready, your cache connection ready, all the data, all the configuration settings that you need to fetch, you have fetch all of this, and then you start listening and everything works. If you don't, then very bad things happen. And they wanted to solve the very bad things. And I started working on the plugins, on an asynchronous plugin system, or a graph-based, system to start plugins recursively, and that plugin can have sub-plugins and sub-plugins and some plugins and so on and so forth. And it was supposed to be callback-based, at the time. We didn't have promises back. Remember, guys, this started when Node.js did not have promises, This was a long time ago, And at that time, I started working on this, and this plugin was called, at the beginning, this library was called Boot in the Arse. Then Luca, the other person in this call, told me, no, that name is not okay for the enterprise. Nobody will ever install this. So you should call it in a more professional way. And this became Avio. Okay. And in fact, it's version 9.
Sorry, but if you open the original comics of Fastify, you can still see boot in the arse.
Oh yeah. I'm not hiding anything. It was not cleaned. Okay. In fact, that's the reason why the original file is called boot.js. Okay. It's still called boot. I didn't change anything. I just changed the name. Okay. And so it's great. And so the reason why it's version 9, it's because while Thomas was starting using it, was finding so many bugs, so many problems, and that we had to go and make so many major changes to the library. So in fact, in order to stabilize Fastify, it reached to version 9 of Avio, which is wow. Okay. There were a lot of changes. We slapped in promises. We fixed a lot of bugs and so on and so forth. You can use Avio with Express if you like it. Okay, to be honest.
Well, somebody's using it, right? Was trying to use it, right?
Yeah, no, I think somebody's definitely.
Wasn't Wes trying to use?
Yeah.
It's also important to remember that most Fastify libraries can be used with basically any framework virtually.
Yeah, exactly. So now there is that. So that was the plugin. So we had the plugin system. Okay. What I created was solving the other bottleneck, which is JSON rendering. JSON rendering is solved using this library called Fast JSON Stringify, which is so cool. It takes a JSON schema and it renders it, and it generates a function that renders the JSON schema really fast. Great. Okay. Now there was something missing. And so we started shambling all of this together as dependencies and adding tests. And then I was using a router. I don't remember the name, but it was from Joab Wyatt.
Wayfarer.
From Josh. Hi, Josh. So because it was faster than Express, okay? Than the Express router, okay? And then...
well, also because, I mean, probably we are skipping a couple of core principles, right? While Fastify was incubating, more kind of like principles were coming up. Like, for example, we wanted to have something that was encapsulated because the principle was that I should be able to actually swap and not define the order of load of the plugins ahead of time, but there should be an event-based mechanism. Then we found a problem right in the router of Express that was highly non-deterministic, and that could have been a problem when you try to basically, have a plugin system. If the router is non-deterministic, probably there might be an issue on how you load the plugin. So the concept is that Fastify, I think the beauty of Fastify was that it started since the inception to be not just like let's build something new for the sake of building, but the modularity was also in the design. Every single module was solving a problem that we experienced. Like you said, you started with the logging, and then I think what was also the phase in which Fastify was born was at the crossing the chasm of microservices, where our question started to be, why the heck do I need to build a framework? And remember, Theo, at the time there was Kraken that was
Kraken.js
dominant from PayPal. And
Kraken.js, I think, okay, now Kraken.js is... No, it's still there.
They use it all internally because it was Douglas Crawford that was...
They still use it as you still use it PayPal. It's still a thing.
I see a business opportunity there, by the way. Just saying.
Big time.
But that was actually kind of like the cool thing. And then we started with the events. But for us, the microservice was kind of like the whole thing. I said, why do I need to freaking like build this modular thing where I want to be able to take pieces and push them into the new microservice. I don't want to create like a base library and then have another npm dependency that contains everything, and then have to maintain a singleton of all these dependencies. And so that was kind of like the beginning, I think, of the success of Fastify, like the idea of like modularity, encapsulation, but actually this idea of the Lego bricks, right? That was kind of like always the driving principle.
Yeah, you're saying something. Is really the reason why you can probably say when Fastify was born is it's like the child of the microservices era. There's a lot of ideas stolen from microservices that are baked in Fastify design. But also, I think something really smart that we did there was that we didn't want to impose the microservices mindset to our users. So what we said was, you can start with a monolith and build something as big as you want, and you can decide to cut it at any time, because thank you to encapsulation, blah, 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 all the things that we baked into it. Then let's say you have like a piece of your service that is an extremely hot path. You can easily eject it without requiring 3 months of rewrite of weird dependency. I think that was probably also one of the reason for the success. And same also the other way, right? So you have microservices. Fuck, I have too many. I want to like assemble them a bit and some more macro services. Okay, no problem. Just register the module that you ejected 2 years ago. No problem.
And believe it or not, Thomas, that has been the hardest thing to sell in enterprise or anywhere. Like what we thought was selling like as easy as like, selling, anything. That was like the hardest, because it was not in people's mindset, right? The kind of like model, because many people didn't even believe it would work. And then you always have to show it, to demonstrate it, to prove it, and then say, okay, cool. But why? And still nowadays, I think many people don't realize the power of Fastify. The real power of Fastify is that the money saving feature is that one. All the rest is, like you were saying, performance. Okay, cool, but
yeah, the problem is this is something that they only hit at very big scale, and this is also part of the problem. Like there's people that either didn't arrive there yet, or they're there and they're just decided like
I would classify Fastify, the framework for people that run Node that knows how to run Node in production, okay, and wants to run Node in production well. It's not the simplest. It's not the easier to use. It's not. It's easy to use, but it's not the easiest to use. Okay, no. And it's but it has a lot of things built in, like very important things for security, for preventing, for example, prototype poisoning. Now you can most frameworks out there suffer from prototype poisoning. It's a plug. Okay, Fastify, it has protection built in. So okay, and they don't even know, like the most developers making the choice don't even know this is a problem, okay, or that they need to run validation because they're using TypeScript. I'm joking here, but this is I hope this thing has been engraved
for
in
the route
there.
declaration, right? Oh, sorry.
Yes.
There's a bit of delay. But yeah, I mean, the same is for the route declaration with the regular expressions. I mean, there is a very long series of small features that will save your ass in production. And yeah, you don't know until they do.
But
it's so, Thomas, tell us, okay, so what happened, okay, was we started working together on this. We worked on the side, okay. I presented it to a lot of conferences. You started doing some talks to some conference too, Thomas. But at some point you finished university. What happened there? Because I think that's a part of Fastify. Like a lot of people know that I was working for Nearform and I was doing the a little bit of the show, the consultant and so on. But you were probably less known. Okay, what we were working on and so on.
I was working during university in in a small web company in my region. Then also with them, I went to Dubai to work for building a mobile app for a local bank, which was cool. And roughly at the same time, you introduced me to Luca, where we had a chat. I think this was, I don't know,
February
early
2017.
2017. Perfect. February 2017, where you pitched me the idea of the startup you wanted to build. The name was Let's Do It. And other than the cool things you wanted to build, it was what really also sold me was that you had you talked to me a lot about the fact that you wanted to invest in the open source world. You wanted to invest into also giving back to the community. And this is definitely something that sold me even more than the actual product. And so I try to remember exactly when I started. I think it was shortly after, like
March.
around May, probably. Try to
End
remember
of
now.
March.
March, okay.
Beginning of April. Yeah.
Okay, still with the M. Still a month with the M. And yeah, then for what was it, like a year and a half slash two, we worked on this, and basically, and part of my time was dedicated to build Let's Do It and its features. And every time, and we were using Fastify and version 0 dot. I don't want to remember how many
I don't
zeros
know,
there were.
like how many version 0 dot we did. We did a lot of
I
version
think
zeros.
39. I think there was like 39. I think it's the last
39 version
one.
0.
Yeah.
Wow, like it was.
So V1 was in let me see, March 2018. So
March
yeah,
2018. Wow.
yeah.
Took a lot. It took us a lot of time to get there.
Yeah, we definitely experimented a lot with it. And I think also, the fact that we were trying to introduce Fastify directly into a real world application like Let's Do It was an excellent way to have a constant feedback loop on our ideas. Probably reason why there was a moment we were doing breaking changes all over the place, trying to nail the API, the functionality, the encapsulate, in fact, we want to encapsulate plugins and so on. And yeah.
So you cut
Then
the
when
release,
was
the
it? What?
1.0.0 Thomas, you cut the 1.0.0 release. Yeah, on March 6th. Wow.
On March 6th.
Yeah.
Oh wow. So and I think you left Let's Do It right a couple of months later, right? Something like that.
Yeah, I left, if I remember correctly, was in June or July 2018, because then I started with Elastic in August, where with Elastic I started working on the Elasticsearch client for the JavaScript community. So still open source world, but just a different scale back then.
And just like I know that probably will not listen, but I think actually what was interesting at the time was that also my co-founder at the time, Mirko, understood that we were embarking a risk on one side, but we had the opportunity of shaping something, right? Of like trying something firsthand. And I remember you remember, Thomas, when we wrote the recommendation algorithm all in Node, and it was
Node and Redis. Yeah.
Node and Redis back in 2017. So 8 years before the advent of AI. And that thing was like crunching recommendation at the speed of light, like with a simple Node instance, deploying in Docker on EC2, not even ECS, EC2.
Yeah. I remember the keyword that year was vector all over the place, right?
I remember calling Thomas, if I can tell this thing 1 second, in the morning here in Vancouver, and telling him about the theory and the idea behind how to actually construct this in-memory graph using Redis, and teaching him about Jacquard index and cosine
So we
similarity.
shipped something like that again.
Once that you build it once, it's in your bones. You can't let it go. And Thomas, like, I remember
especially
also when
if it works, right?
At the time, the thing was working like a charm. It has just a tiny small issue with overflowing Postgres tables, but once that we figured out how to build the historical, that was done. But the cool thing, I remember also calling you about the circuit breaker. Thomas, I have a challenge for you. We need to build a circuit breaker. And I remember that you disappear like one afternoon, and the morning after you show me the demo of the circuit breaker. That I think is still there, right? The plugin.
Of course, it's still there and maintained.
There is a circuit breaker plugin. Yeah,
there is a Fastify circuit breaker. You still have the original image that Thomas designed. I think this is an image there.
I don't know if Thomas was given the freedom of designing an image, because with all
no,
respect,
there was. I think he copied that. He copied that. He didn't do the image himself. I think he copied it. He stole the image from somebody. I don't know even how he could even design it.
If you open the repository and see how well it's aligned to the title in a markdown file, sorry, but that is not an easy challenge, by the way.
You know, he did something magic with the layout. It's amazing.
And I mean, fast forward, Thomas, you know, the old good times. I think what I want actually to kind of like go in the second half of this chat, for all the people that will listen, are a couple of things. The first one that I would like to focus is a little bit, if you can share what you just started, but the process of like starting from the ground up, contributing, and what kind of value it generated for you nowadays. Because I think Matteo kind of hinted to it, like your progression from a student to an engineering manager in a company that is well known and traded. But you know, what kind of steps and how did open source and Fastify especially help you to set your mind? I'm not caring about like the fuzzy thing. I'm caring about like from a technical standpoint, where Fastify was the right practice field for you to become who you are today.
So I think my internet dropped for a second. Let me repeat the question to make sure and I got it, everything. So how Fastify helped me over the years? This is the gist of it?
Yeah, the gist, yeah.
Okay. And well, let's say that the other than, you know, and the really cool part about starting a project greenfield is that in that moment, until version 1 at least, you have zero responsibilities. You can experiment, you know, you can break stuff and see what happens. You can redesign. Like, there is a lot of freedom to explore a problem and try to come up with a nice solution for it. Like, we had 39 minors, and I have no idea how many patch releases, mainly because we wanted to explore this problem. And actually, this was 39 minors for the framework itself, but the framework is basically an excellent wrapper of the, I don't remember now even how many libraries we wrote.
Many.
So if you count also the minor version of all those libraries.
Yeah, no, the majors. So, it's some of them were already on the 1.0, 2.0. It's been, some of them are higher than Fastify now. So plenty. Like, I think right now, I think I was checking, and I think Fastify Compress is version 8 or 9 or something. It was just like, how can we get that? That is so high, because there was change, like each individual module that you can use changes at its own pace. Okay, so, and it's great. It's a great problem. It's a great things to do.
Wow.
Yeah, that's true. By the way, you can even
talking about Fastify Compress, because there was
versions.
Yes. Oh, yeah, that is true, and that's actually possible with Fastify. And a lot of people don't realize that is the key selling point, and one of the key long-term is a long-term superpower that people don't really realize, that they can have two things and working with two different versions at the same time is a critical feature of Fastify, critical feature of NPM. Not a lot of other frameworks have this feature. Okay, so it's pretty amazing.
Which other framework, Theo? I remember the declarative syntax for multiple versions, but I don't remember the framework. Was that Happy?
No, Happy didn't have it. Happy
didn't have it.
Happy didn't have it. Happy didn't have it. And no, I think nothing. No one had something like had something like that. Okay, and it was great, to be honest.
I think the best feature of Fastify, like above any other, and I think we must agree on that, is the on-request hook, a masterpiece of.
We all know why, because Luca added it. Okay, there is
3 months of work of Thomas calling me every day, say, any progress? And say, hey, Thomas,
everybody needed the damn hook, and you took so long to do the hook, Luca.
Well, it was not easy. I even have to kind of like make use silently of Thomas to fix some stuff. And then it was on our trip that you basically forced me to commit it. It said, I don't think on request can wait anymore. And I said, Matteo, we are on a flight. And he said, yeah, we have Wi-Fi. I think you can finish it. And there were 2 unit tests left to finish that I had to write on an intercontinental flight with Matteo Collina sitting next to me like an hawk. And then when I pushed the code, I finally felt so relieved that.
Where we're going, Luca?
Like a hook.
It was that same trip of Vancouver. That a lot of things happened on that flight, on that trip. That's probably a life-changing trip for you, Luca. So it's
my first Fastify, first and only close brackets contribution to Fastify. Yeah, a great trip of my life, and yeah, it was great. But I think the hook was a masterpiece. Like, I'm just trolling. It's just like has been painful to write. But I remember how I think, Thomas, didn't we, when you kind of like told me we need to write an on request hook, what was we were discussing about something, and that's how it came up, that hook.
I don't remember what exactly we were discussing, but probably I can figure out what was the need. Essentially, the problem we had was that we needed to interject the request in a specific moment to do something and with reasonable performance. And the point of the on-request hook was execute this function as soon as possible before body parsing, before literally everything else, which was a good way probably to either populate some cache or to run some type of sort of validation. I don't remember exactly, but we needed something very early on, much before the serialization, the body parsing.
I think we changed it, I don't know, so many times the order of the hooks in those years. So at the end, on request was where we settled. Okay. So it's fun. Like there's some historical reason why we have a non request and a pre-validation hook. And that's why we have this kind of stupid things.
The majority of hooks actually came from Let's Do It, because we were building all these hooks for Let's Do It, like for authentication, for doing caching, for doing some sort of header rewriting that we needed to hack some stuff in AWS to save money. I think that was but hooks generally like. And the other function that I was super like, and I think is so not documented, but under promoted, is inject.
Oh, that is a masterpiece. So that is a total masterpiece. So what we did, okay, this was a very fun story. So API had this feature, okay, but it was already encapsulated in a different module. However, that module was
SOT, right? I think the module name was SHOT or something.
SHOT. The module was SHOT. It was fantastic. The module was perfect. Okay. However, in order to use it in Fastify, we needed some changes. Okay. Specifically, wanted to support promises, callbacks in a certain way, and essentially be responsible of a very key API of our system. Okay. And that became the key of testing the system, but not just testing. Now, it's actually so good, okay, that we were able to use it. If you use it for AWS, so it's using our AWS Lambda adapter, okay, and it's because of that, it's so much faster than the Express one native. It's like I think it's a 10x factor all in all compared, okay, because it's because it's a native primitive, it can be done in a very optimized way, and it's so damn good. Okay. By the way, you can use it's called, the new module is called the Light My Request, and Light My Request can be used also with Express. So also Express is supported. So it's, and a lot of some. So we have some users that use it independently of Fastify, to be honest. Okay.
And something actually very cool you can do with it is, if you have an application structured as a monolith and you need module A to talk with module B, you can use inject to handle the communication. Then you move to microservices. You don't change the code because you just enough to say, hey, use HTTP now, and you're good to go. So now, if you are in a monolith, you have still a fake HTTP call, but with basically virtually zero latency.
You probably have not followed what we shipped. You know what we. So this is the promo moment. I'm sorry, Thomas.
Go for it. Go for it.
It's open source. There's not
it's
really
open
much
source.
promo.
Okay. So what we did, okay, we took that one step further. Okay. We made it possible for somebody, for a developer, to run multiple Node.js application inside the same process as different threads, each one of them communicating essentially via HTTP calls, but in memory, okay, in the sense of it's fully in memory, fully in memory calls, but baked underneath by inject. So, and Light My Request. So basically, you can. I extended it recently for that reason, to add support for streaming. So originally it didn't have streaming support, so you need to specify the full body and get the full body as an outcome. But with the latest change, you can specify, you can get a stream out, okay, and it works so well. And I did some magic there to make it work across threads and so on. On top of another thing that I wrote, which is called Undici, which is something you contributed as well later on, Thomas, for when you were at Elastic. These are that we should have another session on Undici at some point. I think it's going to be another funny topic to do.
On Elastic
another.
Sorry, I was making a joke. I thought on Elastic for a second, but then.
Well, Elastic, I will not go into open source politics, so I'm leaving that. We should leave that to others, or do a session on open source politics. But then probably Thomas will get into. You are open source now. You had a lot of story there. It's a funny.
We promise no politics, yeah. We promise no politics, and the debate starts here, right? Like, I need to separate them, but you know, one thing that if I can actually say it, well, I'm gonna say Daniel. I think going back to the story of the student that took the open source opportunity to grow and build a framework that reached 10 million downloads per month after, let's say, less than a decade, right? Has been that the most incredible thing of the story of Fastify has been literally for me to meet somebody that could take any sort of crazy, insane idea and transform it into inject, into decorate, into a bunch of hooks, a bunch of stuff. Decorate came from basically another call early morning, Thomas afternoon, chatting about the way we should actually structure code and like. But I think actually the nicest thing about Fastify are the people, like Matteo, you were saying, because yeah, I think you and I were extremely lucky to meet people like Thomas, like Dave, especially myself, right? When I actually said I was talking to Matteo about what he just said about inject, and we were chatting about this crazy thing about I told him, imagine if things would not use the network, would just actually communicate through remoting, through a way where the transport is completely irrelevant, right? And you and I, remember, Thomas, we spoke at NodeConf about, I think the future of Fastify is to be transport independent. Can we remove HTTP and make it not the primitive and make the other stuff the primitive?
It never happened, Luca.
No, and I'm sorry for that, because I think that's the biggest opportunity for Fastify.
Actually, it didn't happen yet, I think, is the correct way.
Correct, because I think with what actually, Theo, we started doing with what and that intra-process communication, That's the beginning.
It's very close to that concept. Okay, so we'll see.
And also the TypeScript support. You remember we were talking about contract-based communication instead of declarative communication.
That happened.
That happened, right?
The Fastify, the TypeScript support, thanks for the amazing community and Eden Sinclair 81 on GitHub. It happened. Okay, there is a fantastic library called the Typebox that you should be using. Okay, that allows you to write, to use JSON, to use TypeScript to write type-safe JSON schema. Okay, that then you can feed to AJV, for example, for running your validation. But you write the TypeScript and that produces you a live type, and it's actually pretty amazing, to be honest.
Yeah, but it's kind of like this going back to what Thomas was saying at the beginning, the math science, right? The nicest thing about this group, but especially Fastify and many of the open source communities, the fact that you don't need really to, from idea to realization is all about collaboration, right? It's all about finding the right way to communicate with people. And I think that's actually fantastic because many things could not be realized without an idea, but without the people making it possible, right? And
but there's also sorry to interrupt very quickly. Something really cool about open source is that it gives you the freedom to do some experiments that maybe in a business you couldn't do because there's a budget, there is a deadline you need to meet. In the open source world, with good and bads, one of the goods is that if you want to invest 6 months to figure out a problem, okay, you can. And a lot of the libraries we built over time are the result of just not giving us any timeline or any deadline. Just, okay, let's figure out the best way to solve this problem. And we took the time. Like my favorite is Find My Way, the router that arrived, I think, about a year later into the project. Yep. And also that one had a lot of major releases. Also, proud moment, and it was used by Netflix on Fastify, which means also by Netflix at some point. So, and that was, I think, months of work just to create something that technically already existed, right?
Just to clarify, guys, this is at version 9, okay? And this thing, okay, just to clarify the complexity, okay? It has a single method, okay, that is long, and it's very long, okay? It's a 300 more. No, sorry. This one starts at, this is the method, 566. It's 200-300 lines of code. It's impossible to understand what is going on at some point. It's very hard. You need to know exactly how it is. And the reason why it's written in that way is because to achieve the best performance, okay, you need to essentially put everything in a single function and do the work of the compiler. At least that was true at the time we wrote it. I'm not necessarily convinced that this is still true today. I think V8 got way smarter over time to figure this thing out. But still, it's still super fast. And more or less every single router that came out of it, more or less still falls apart in a certain conditions, okay? There is there are certain routers that are faster for some specific small use cases, okay? Like a typical case, if you just, I don't know, add 2-3 routes or few routes, you could be faster, of course, okay? Or maybe you don't add multi-parametric support, or you don't allow static routes and parametric routes in the same prefix, okay? These kind of things. And the more limits you put, the more the hardest, the simplest is to be fast, okay? And of course, you can be faster if you put a lot of limits, okay? And but still, so far, it's probably one of the fastest options out there. I every time somebody claims there is a faster one, I go down and take your old benchmarks for a ride, Thomas, and understand what's going on. And then there was one recently that I had to modify the benchmark to show the fact that the thing was like, literally this router was written around our benchmark, so that you will shine on that benchmark. You change that benchmark, you add one route to that benchmark, and the performance of that router fall apart. And
Yeah,
it was, I was just like, how can? And they were in their website. I didn't check recently, so I'm not going to shame. But I've already, there's a blog, a blog that I'm going to link down here. I'm not sharing it in the live, but. At the time when I was doing this check, they were listing on the website how faster they were compared to Fastify and Find My Way and so on and so forth. And I was just like, gosh, you know, why are you doing this?
That probably, if I have to change something we did about Fastify, was probably putting like all the performance, all the benchmark part in the first front page, because people then look only at that and miss the rest of it.
Yeah.
And
that is true.
That is probably something that will change if we could go back, because at the time we were like very excited, of course, about it.
Yeah.
But that is one little shard of what Fastify is, the performance part, right?
I completely agree with you, Thomas. But that's the beauty of evolving projects, right? You learn, you live, you learn. You know that now Fastify is beyond fast framework, is literally a foundational piece of many other applications. So we have been chatting for like way over 50 minutes. I just want to kind of like give us a couple of minutes before wrapping up. And one question I have for you, Thomas. We go back to the beginning, but is Fastify a framework, a library? What is that?
Well, I guess this is a very philosophical question. It depends on your definition. I would say is a framework. My answer is a framework, and probably the subtitle of this is a very opinionated, unopinionated framework. This is how I would probably describe it.
Yeah,
I don't know if Matteo agrees or not, but
it's a framework because it gives you strict guidelines over a very flexible space of operation, right? It's not, but it's not a library because it basically gives you way beyond what a library gives. It's not just like a micro utility. It's literally something that goes end to end. In my opinion, I can be completely wrong.
It is true.
That's
it is true.
Thomas, like the final question probably is, where do you see Fastify going?
Gee, I will need to think a bit about it. And the reason is because if you were asking me 10 years ago, 9 years ago, this question, and then knowing what I know today, I would never had, imagine that. I would guess probably continue on the direction of conquering the enterprise space and keep solving the hard problems. And probably something that it will be beneficial for the framework itself is if I figure out a way to also teach people that are using it about the problems and how to solve them. I don't know if this is possible, by the way. This is just a wishful thinking area. And yeah, I don't know. I would say probably the lamest answer is, I don't know, 100 million download by, I don't know, Matteo, you were doing the math. So by
December.
2030. No, 100 million download a month. Sorry.
A month? Oh, I don't know. Who knows? Okay, who knows? Who knows will be there? Yeah. So let's
because
let's not be.
Between 2017 and 2019, we grew by one order of magnitude per year.
Yeah.
Then there was COVID-ish, and then 1 million, 10 million, but it was 4 years between the two of them. So between 10 and 100, I don't know. I hope I will keep seeing the curve to grow.
Amazing. Okay. So yeah, I think it's this is a wrap. Okay, I think we had a long chat about open source, about history of a good piece of my life, to be honest. So I had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun together. Okay. And it's a very good piece of my life. I'm very happy of how things turned out, and the framework that a lot of people love the framework, likes it, and we're able to, make something out of it. Okay. So I'm very, very happy about all of this, to be honest. So I can't, I would change a few things, of course, because mistakes were made. But to be honest, it turned out okay. So I'm very happy about this baby we made a few years back. So,
Thomas, we personally thank you so much for finding the time to have this chat, completely unscripted, completely unprepared, as natural as possible. But I feel to say, as we always have been building stuff together and interacting, so we kept it real. Once again, thank you for being here. I thank everyone listening through this chat. And if you have any questions, feel free to write them down. We will get probably Thomas even to reply to some of them. And yeah, until then, see you next time. Ciao, everyone.
bye, guys. Ciao.
Ciao, Thomas.